All right, class. Welcome to week 3. My house has no air conditioning, so I am definitely feeling the heat. And of course, you've been working very hard feeling the heat of a major workload, which you are all doing such a great job with. So good job, class. All right. So this week you have your first exam, and it's a take-home paper exam. If you've been doing well on your papers, your Sunday papers, then you'll do fine with this one. You're just going to have more writing to do this week that will all be due on Sunday, but that's it. And so you're mainly just watching documentaries. Actually, just watching documentaries, not me doing lectures, just for this week. I really hope that you really soak in the one on Haiti, because learning history of Haiti is super important, especially since it's in our hemisphere also. And it's just a real shame that so many Americans are not aware of a very significant revolution, the Haitian Revolution. And so I hope you really enjoy that and absorb it. My daughter is part Haitian. My ex-wife's mom is from Haiti. And I didn't know much about Haiti until I was with my daughter's mom. And it really was an eye-opener for me as an American, to learn about the history of Haiti. And I wish I could actually go over more details on that with you. But I think this will be good exposure for you. And so, that's all I have to say about that, I think. Oh, and the issue of, my last thought that I did in this whole slavery discussion and that we went over is that even with the issue of racism, since this is a world history class, I just kind of want to clarify something. In America, we think of everything through the lens of the way that we perceive things in America. And we need to remember that. Racism in the world it's mainly not been color-based. And this is something that might blow us away in America, right? If you just even think about Hitler and the Nazis, and I can't remember if I mentioned this in one of the lectures or not, Jews in Germany looked like Germans, a good amount of them. So much so that the reason why they had to have the yellow star is, without a yellow star, many wouldn't even know. I actually have a friend I think it was his grandfather, was a kind of blondish, blue-eyed guy, and he was on a train in Germany, and this Nazi tried to recruit his father to get involved in Nazi politics, his grandfather, should I say, not knowing that this man was Jewish, actually, a Jewish German. And so that was not based on skin color. That racism that the German regime had against Jews was not color-based. You get what I'm saying? It's not based on them looking much different. They tried to talk about how different they looked, but it wasn't. Ultimately, for all the stereotypes that tried to give Jews about their noses and all this stuff, many did not look what they believed to expect when we saw a Jewish person. And the British Isles, there's been tremendous amount of racism that has took place between the English and, let's say, the Irish. This is one example. But Scotland, Wales, and England, the English, and it's been a kind of a rough ride in terms of racial or ethnic harmony or not. The very word Welsh comes from an Anglo-Saxon word which means foreigner or slave. This is what the Anglo-Saxon invaders felt about the local Celts, and then that ended up being put on the Welsh. The Welsh, in their original language, don't even call themselves Welsh. I have a word I can't pronounce. I might have mentioned that in one of the lectures, but I just want to remind you of this again. So what we end up having is a unique form that, not just here, but in this hemisphere, of the switch to African slavery made skin an identifier. And this is the problem. And so what I was hoping that you were kind of seeing through some of the discussions I had in one of the posts, is that also one of the differences between slavery that was done in Africa and parts of the world than here is that people can really no longer tell who if you're a descendant of slaves. In most countries, it's not clear by looking at you if you were necessarily a descendant of a slave, right? So, in Sweden, in Norse mythology, Scandinavia, there was a god, Heimdall, and Heimdall makes several castes of people, and thralls are one of them. Thralls are the slave a group that this is white slaves, people view to be a part of this inherent subservient position. Now, as a person with Swedish background, I am more likely to be a descendant of a slave than I am of a Viking, but I could be both. But there's a strong chance of that because my family, came where they came from and the class they were a part of, especially if you have any Scandinavian family rooted in the peasantry. Okay, so. But when you see me, you don't think, oh, you're a descendant of slave. And in America, we have this unique problem where there's a stigma, this idea that, right, that's the problem, is that part of the racism that was used to establish slavery is also a reminder that we constantly have here that's embedded. And, we had segregation just end a few years before I was born. So, But if you want to look at like a kind of broader topic, a book that covers this topic of racism in the ancient world and a more wide variety, the multicultural view of racism, if you will, around the globe, and prior to even modern scientific racism, I recommend this book that I read in grad school called The Invention of Racism in Classical Antiquity, okay, by Benjamin Isaac. And it covers the way that different societies had different reasons or thoughts about race and ethnicity. It's a fascinating read. And then I also would like to recommend, I always recommend the sagas. This is called the Laxdala Saga. You can see it. And this is an Icelandic saga that had to do with Vikings. These are often called Viking sagas. And the founders of Iceland were Vikings. And in this Laxdala saga, you have a part here where a Viking goes to a slave market, and these are white women slaves mainly. And he says an Irish slave, and if you look, I'm not going to take time to read this. I was going to read it, but it depicts slavery in the ancient world. And you see that the treatment of women, and you see how this permeates so many different societies. Now, the difference with this slavery as well, though, that we see in Laxdala Saga, is that he produces a son with this Irish sex slave, and it becomes his favorite son. And the son ends up being a founder of an important person in Icelandic history. And this mother, who was a sex slave, you could argue, of course, that she's raped because she didn't have a choice, that this is the position she had. She ends up getting her own property, he lets her free, and she ends up being able to marry. And basically, essentially, they blend into society. So I'm not downplaying this story's, the tragedy of this story, but I'm also trying to always kind of point out, this is the two main things I want to point out, that slavery and racism, the definitions and how they operate, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. The way the societies use racism, gender relations, and slavery, there are a wide range of variables as to what you see. And we think of things strictly often through our own American lens of how those would pan out. So I'm not really trying to... that's what I'm really kind of trying to show you, is the diversity of bad things in this world, and again, how a one size doesn't fit all when it comes to this topic. So I hope you found that helpful and informative, and just recognize that's what I'm trying to expose you to. So let's all be good to each other, be a nice person, have a great week, be a hard worker, and we'll be in touch.